This is WFYI News Now. It's July 22nd, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, a proposal could add local control over short-term rentals in Indianapolis. What we know about the state's first reported West Nile virus disease case of 2024. An effort to diversify the motorsports industry, and the state's overhaul of high school diploma requirements is still underway.
Every bit of feedback we've heard thus far since that March date when we launched is all going to be a part of recommendations ahead.
Those stories are coming up, but first, Indiana Democratic Party and Indiana voters are reacting to the news that President Joe Biden will not run for re-election. In a letter released on Sunday, Biden announced he would be dropping out of the 2024 presidential race and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as his successor. WFYI's Ben Thorpe has more.
The Indiana Democratic Party released a statement thanking President Biden for his leadership and calling for the party to unite behind Vice President Harris. Speaking to voters in downtown Indianapolis, many felt the president's decision was the right one. Independent Jay Dishmock says he would not vote for Trump, but felt a vote for Biden would have been wasted.
He's not capable of serving out another 4 years. Impossible. I mean, I saw him on the debate stage. He looked awful.
Democrat Mara Sullivan says she worries about the vice president's electability.
It's going to be really very difficult for her to sadly get the votes that are needed, despite her being more than qualified.
Democrats will hold a national convention in August, but some hope there is an official decision about Biden's successor before that time. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Ben Thorpe.
Gubernatorial candidate Jennifer McCormick said she respects and appreciates Biden's legacy of service, calling his decision to drop out another act in that legacy. She said as governor, she would be committed to working with whoever is president. Senate candidate Valerie McRae and Attorney General candidate Destiny Wells similarly praised Biden while also throwing their support behind Vice President Kamala Harris to succeed him as the Democrats' presidential nominee. McRae said Harris would unlock a new energy for the race, while Wells said rallying support for Harris continues Biden's work. Republican candidates Mike Braun and Jim Banks both said that Biden should immediately resign as president if he can't continue as the nominee. And a proposal to add some local control over short-term rentals in Indianapolis moved forward. WFYI's Jill Sheridan reports.
Property owners who provide homes for short-term rental in Indianapolis will need to register and pay a one-time fee of $150 under a new ordinance. Dakota Pulicki, president of the Fountain Square Neighborhood Association, says neighborhoods are dealing with an increased number of problem properties and points to a recent shooting at a party in Fountain Square this month.
What's worse is that property is actually characteristic of others our coalition seeks to address. They're operated by negligent owners and operators. The property had already been removed from Airbnb, is now removed by Verbo, but there was still blood in the streets that had yet to be cleaned up, and they had already reposted it on their own website.
The registry would establish better contacts for police when issues arise at rental properties. The Metropolitan Economic Development Committee passed the proposal this week, and it heads to the full council. If adopted, it would go into effect next year. I'm Jill Sheridan.
The Indiana Department of Health is warning people to use insect repellent and wear protective clothing following the state's first reported West Nile virus disease case of 2024. The agency expects to see additional cases as the mosquito season progresses. The West Nile virus is primarily spread by mosquitoes. While the case was reported in Lake County, IDOH says virus activity has also been detected in mosquitoes throughout the state. Most people infected have no symptoms or only mild flu-like symptoms. IDOH says people who think they may have the West Nile virus disease should see their healthcare provider. As NASCAR drivers zip around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, organizations are getting in on the excitement with efforts to diversify the motorsports industry. WFYI's Samantha Horton reports kids from the Boys and Girls Club of Indianapolis get to sit in the driver's seat to learn about STEM skills used in race cars.
The 3-day camp at Dallara IndyCar Factory gives kids a chance to immerse themselves in a variety of areas in motorsports, from engineering to driving. The event is a part of the Max Siegel Inc. Youth Foundation's outreach to youth sports for educational and leadership opportunities for at-risk youth. 12-year-old Kixton Gormel says he was most excited to try out the race car simulator.
We got to race some small sims like this. We learned how carbon fiber is made for the cars and how all the other cars are made.
9-year-old Winston Fort says he enjoys the science.
I really like the physics and gravity all by itself.
Organizers hope participants leave the camp seeing a possible future in motorsports. Gormel and Fort both want to be race car drivers one day. I'm Samantha Horton.
And for our final story today, Indiana's overhaul of high school diploma requirements is still underway. State education leaders are asking for more input on the proposed diplomas, and the Education Department's timeline to finalize the proposal is pushed back now. From WFYI's Education Desk, Rachel Fredette has more.
More than 6,000 people have submitted feedback about the first diploma draft. Some want the state's current honors diploma to remain an option. Others say fine arts experience should be considered work-based learning to satisfy graduation requirements. Katie Jenner is Indiana's education secretary. Jenner says there's one response they heard more than any others: slow down the process.
Every bit of feedback we've heard thus far since that March date when we launched is all going to be a part of recommendations ahead.
The department will bring a revised draft of the diplomas to the state board in August. State education leaders previously planned to share the draft updates this month. The board is required by state law to adopt new requirements by the end of the year. The public can submit feedback until July 30th. I'm Rachel Fredette.
A public hearing on the diploma changes will be held July 30th at the Indiana Government Center South. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Dodlin with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.